Good afternoon. We're down here again in Las Vegas, Nevada, just after court. We have you some big updates today and some breaking news for court. We're excited down here. We had an awesome day today. We had Todd Engel addressing one of the witnesses today, and he brought up some things, and the judge has told him that he's not able to speak the rest of the day, that his attorney was going to. So there's been a bunch of things going on today, but we'll let Andrea talk to you about this afternoon, some of the court happenings that happened, and then we'll get into the breaking news here shortly as soon as we got quite a few people on. So go ahead.
All right, so we go in after lunch, and once again we're in without the jury, and they're arguing because they're going to bring the longbow interviews in today. And Jess Marchese for Eric Parker is fighting. He wants the whole longbow brought in. He doesn't want him. They're cutting it into 18 different little clips. They can pick and choose parts that they want to bring in. He had quite a few other parts that he wanted to be included if they weren't going to do the entire thing. He was arguing for the rule of completion. They need to bring the entire statement up. Now, Longbow is an undercover FBI agency that pretended to be a documentary film team that went around interviewing people with loaded questions, trying to get them to incriminate themselves. And they're playing Greg Burleson, Scott Dresslers, and Eric Parker's. And our biggest fight was we wanted the whole longbow put in. We spent probably at least a half an hour arguing this, and at the end the judge says that she doesn't see. There was one portion that she said wasn't necessary but was not unadmissible, and then asked if the prosecution could get it in, and Dickinson said it would be difficult to do on the fly, so she wasn't going to make them do that. And but they had someone else that was going to go first, and so she said we'll let them go first, and they weren't going to enter any new longbow into the courtroom today. Then we brought in Special Agent Michael Caputo, right?
Yeah, Michael Caputo. We're not getting his name quite right.
At the beginning of this, the judge says his testimony will only go to Greg Burleson. It does not affect the other 5 people. He was the assistant special agent in charge for the Phoenix area, so he's number 2 in all of the FBI for the Phoenix area. He's been with the FBI 18 years in May. He was a police officer before that.
So it's this is the breaking news part. The prosecution was asking him questions, and some of their questions were talking about Greg Burleson, that he actually has been working with the FBI since 2012 as an informant. And he made several phone calls to the FBI, even as late as 2016. He made a phone call, and these phone calls were recorded, and some of them were played in court today. And he actually had 2 FBI handlers that he was working for since 2012 and 2013. Both of these FBI agents have testified in this trial. The other FBI agent's name is Adam Nixon, and then Michael Caputo. These 2 FBI agents were Greg Burleson's handler. That's the sad part. We don't know the extent of none of this yet. This is just the information the prosecutors have brought out today, and that Greg Burleson's attorney was the only one that cross-examined this agent Caputo.
Because they said the testimony was only to him.
Yeah, the testimony was only for him, so they could not, the other defendants weren't allowed, I guess, to cross-examine this witness and ask him any questions. They made that set up at the very first before they ever brought him on the stand, and the prosecutors made that exception on this beforehand. The judge made that ruling. So we know that Greg has been working with them since 2012 for money, they said. He was paid on other cases, and they did not specify this case here, the Bundy case, but he has been working since 2012 for them on other cases. This case here, one of the phone calls that were brought up and played was about this case. And Greg was explaining how he pretty much became Facebook popular, how it went viral, some of the things that he brought up about the case for the Bundy trial. And he was talking about the weapons and the guns in here. You've got some more information maybe on this.
Absolutely. When Jackson went up to cross-examine, he tried to bring up the fact that Greg may have been calling his handler or his previous handler before Nixon to try to continue working for him, that they were getting paid. And he was asked if they stopped working with him because his info was unreliable. And the agent didn't know. He said that he had transferred him to Nixon, and then months after he was transferred to Nixon, they decided to stop using him. He was asked if he let Greg know he was being recorded. That was no. He was asked if he had, when he was dealing with him, he had any problems with alcohol. Did he have a tendency to exaggerate? And was he paid to help you guys? He said he didn't know about the alcohol problems. Did not, I think there was maybe an objection to the exaggeration, and then he was paid. He was also asked if he wanted to impress the FBI so that he could continue to work with the FBI because he was getting paid for informing, and that may have been the reason for that phone call that he gave to his previous handler.
One of the things I want to make clear is that the attorneys seemed shocked over this. I do not think the attorneys knew. As soon as this information came out, I know Eric Parker, his attorney, Stephen Stewart's, all of them turned around and was facing each other talking quietly and privately during this testimony. They was all obviously shocked.
Everyone in the courtroom was shocked.
Everyone was shocked.
Everyone had these looks on their face like a revolution. Something was being kept from them, and it was this. This was being kept from them until almost the end of the prosecution at this trial. So it was definitely a huge turning point inside the courtroom today.
Jaw-dropping.
Yeah, it was definitely shocking for everyone.
Next, the government called up Charles Johnson. He is the undercover FBI agent. That is not his real name. And he is the guy that was the producer of Longbow.
Did you notice they took him through the side door?
Yes,
so they kept him under security and protection. So Carl Johnson, is that even Carl? Charles Johnson. He's the one with the longbow, and I noticed he's the only witness that I have seen so far that they took him through a side door behind the jurors and brought him in, and that's where he came and went. And that's his code name or his undercover name for this agent.
He was asked a lot of things in direct examination, like what they did to create their undercover team. They created a website, phone numbers, emails. They also didn't say this in court, but I know it to be true. They created false documentaries that they put on the website. So people who were going to Google them or look them up, they looked real. He also was asked if what their pitch was going to be. And he said, we wanted to talk to them and let them know that this was a way for them to get their story out. Their documentary was going to be called America Reloaded. And he had another producer assistant, and her name was Anna, and she was responsible for contacting the people and setting everything up. They talked, did they do Greg's first?
They actually did Greg's first. His was really short.
Yes.
And then they went with longbow afterwards.
Oh, so they haven't done Greg's longbow yet. They started in with Scott Drexler's longbow. And, you know, this is done out at Redfish Lake in Idaho. Scott's was very short. They talked about there was no plan, why they went down. Nothing that I heard was damning to the defense. They said, you know, the reason they went was for the First Amendment zones. They were not there for violence. They were there to match force with force. If they had 200 armed people out there, the supporters should have 200 armed people. They went there to protect the protesters because they had a right to protest. When they went into Eric Parker's, he said weapons with me when I go protesting because I don't like to have pepper spray in my face. And they talked about the First Amendment zones. They talked about why and how they went down. And about when they got there, it was 1 in the morning. They ended up doing guard duty at from 2 to 4. They talked about how the only type of planning that they had was in the morning. They had a little meeting about how the militias were supposed to escort the Bundys to the stage, and that was the only plan. They both were asked multiple questions. I have some of the questions that they, and in each longbow you hear them asking this. Were you willing to take a life? Eric had said he never thought about it. And I don't remember if we heard Scott one. Who was in charge? Lots of who was in charge. Were you there to get the cows back? Who opened the gate? Let's see. When they went into Eric's longbow, which was a lot longer, they cut it up into a bunch of little pieces. He would start to say something and they would stop him. He said nobody wanted to die that day. He did not have optics on his gun, and it was situational. He would only be able to make cover fire, and that was not a good plan. He talked about how on the top of the bridge, when it all started happening, they had a discussion and said if they fire tear gas into the crowd, you can't shoot. That's not the same thing. That's not the same force. He talked about they needed to stand up united. He brings up Carroll's statement and that he was prepared to stand up for the Constitution. Another thing they started asking, do you think the BLM was scared? Eric says we were all scared. They really tried to push that about how scared the BLM was, and they really tried to push being an anti-federal government. All of their questions, and this is the longbow people, their questions were one-sided, trying to get information out from these people. They talked about how the BLM had 3 SWAT teams, a drone, and snipers. He talked about the people on the bridge and the fact that they were very possibly not making it home. They were asked what was the most inspiring moment of that day, and Eric, he kind of got a little teary on the screen, and he said, well, he thought about it for a minute. He's like, watching the cows go back on the range. It was American. Free cows, happy cows taste better.
Not as bitter.
Not as bitter. And the jury laughed at that moment. I mean, it was literally, the courtroom was hanging on every word that was going on the screen. And you could tell, right as it was about to get good, he was about to say his message, they would cut it short and go on to the next clip. And he also ended the day with saying, we were willing to die on that bridge. Not we were willing to shoot people. We were willing to die.
One thing I noticed with some of these videos that I watched there, that these videos are a year or so old, aren't they?
Yes.
Each one of these men were principled men on there. That's the one thing I was proud about seeing. You didn't see a lot of boasting and a lot of crazy people. They went out there for other Americans, for their brother, to be a good Samaritan. That's the reason they came to the Bundy Ranch. These were principled men that are up here on trial, and they proved that the government played these videos that Longbow took back then, that these were principled men even in these videos. They did not get these men in unprincipled situations. They went out there to protect their fellow neighbor and other Americans. That's what I've seen in these videos.
Absolutely.
It was great.
That was what it was all about. It's not about anti-government.
Nope.
It was about making sure that the protesters weren't going to be arrested for protesting in non-First Amendment zones. It was about freedom of speech, and it was about overreaching government.
And Scott Drexler brought that up too in one of these Longbow videos. He said, this is what I would do in the military. He says, I went to protect people, and I went there the same thing to protect people there. And it was all principled things that he was going there for himself. So I thought it was a great day today, an awesome day, a big change from yesterday. And one of the friends here that's an attorney, he made a statement today that what happened today with Greg Burleson, that it's a big thing for a mistrial in this case. We don't know if that's going to happen, but we think that, I personally think, and I think this other gentleman thinks the same thing, that something should be filed in this as a mistrial with a lot of things that have been hid from the government, that they're not letting this evidence out. They're hiding it from people. We've seen it in Portland the same way, and it's coming out again here. So it was an awesome day today, even with what came out.
Yes, I would say that there were tears in many of the jurors' eyes as we were walking out. It was a very powerful end of the day today. And we go back in, I believe we're still going to play more of Eric Parker's longbow, and then we'll go into Greg Burleson's longbow tomorrow. And then the government should rest after that. What, do they have one more? They have one more witness to bring after this gentleman, and the government will rest, hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow.
So no court on Friday for everybody who's wanting to know. No court next week. We have about 9 solid days off. We won't be back until the 4th of April.
April 3rd?
April 3rd. April 3rd. Monday morning. So before we'll be back, and that's on a Monday. So
after tomorrow.
After tomorrow, yes. We'll be here tomorrow, but after that we're going to have like 9 long days off here. So
I'm going to go back to my kids in Idaho and spend some time up in the mountains.
Maybe tomorrow they'll prove that they stopped a lot of bloodshed.
Yes.
On April 12th, 2014.
Exactly. There was a lot of talk about how if they believed if they weren't there that people wouldn't have walked away and there would have been bloodshed. That they were there to keep it peaceful, not to create violence. So.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us again. We'll be back tomorrow about noon with some updates from tomorrow morning's court dates. And we'll see you then. Thanks a lot, and keep praying for us, and we appreciate everybody's supports out there. Thank you.
Court's what time tomorrow?
Court is at 8:30 sharp. It starts here. Okay. 8:30, and we should have you updates by noon. So,
all right. Thanks
again.
Thank you for the update.
Pick and choose parts that they want to bring in. He had quite a few other parts that he wanted to be included if they weren't going to do the entire thing. He was arguing for the rule of completion. They need to bring the entire statement up. Now, Longbow is an undercover FBI agency that pretended to be a documentary film.
Good afternoon. We're down here again in Las Vegas, Nevada, just after court. We have you some big updates today, and some breaking news for court. We're excited down here. We had an awesome day today. We had Todd Engel addressing one of the witnesses today. And
all right, so we go in after lunch, and once again we're in without the jury, and they're arguing because they're going to bring the longbow interviews in today. And Jess Marchese for Eric Parker is fighting. He wants the whole longbow brought in. He doesn't want him. I mean, they're cutting it into 18 different little clips. They can team that went around interviewing people with loaded questions, trying to get them to incriminate themselves. And Eric, they're playing Greg Burleson, Scott Dressler's, and Eric Parker's. And our biggest fight was we wanted the whole longbow put in. We spent probably at least a half an hour arguing this, and at the end, the judge.
He brought up some things, and the judge has told him that he's not able to speak the rest of the day, that his attorney was going to, so there's been a bunch of things going on today, but we'll let Andrea talk to you about this afternoon, some of the court happenings that happened, and then we'll get into the breaking news here shortly as soon as we get quite a few people on. So go ahead.